Tonight on the fifth chapter, Michigan basketball passes another big test by beating Ohio State on the road. Now, is it championship or bust for Dickinson, Livers, and the Wolverines? Sheila Ford Hamp is sitting in on free agency meetings with Speilman, Wood, and Holmes. Could her brilliant football expertise be just what the Lions need to rebuild the roster? And Anthony Edwards throws down the dunk of the year on Yuta Watanabe. Where does this dunk stack up with some of the greats of all time and other embarrassing moments in sports? Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the fifth chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the fifth chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the fifth chapter.
All right, welcome to the fifth chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 81. 5 more fantastic chapters. Unfortunately, though, we have to start off the show with a little bit of sad news because the big story in all of sports today was about Tiger Woods and the horrific car accident that he suffered earlier today. Dennis? Dennis? I don't know if Dennis can hear me, but Tiger Woods suffered that car accident. He rolled over apparently a couple of times. They weren't able to determine whether or not there was any substance abuse or anything involved in the accident, but definitely I want to send our prayers and our best thoughts to Tiger Woods and his family as he's dealing with what looks like, at the very least, another potential setback in his golf career. Now it looks like we have Dennis.
Yeah, get well soon, Tiger, for sure.
Yeah, and considering that he's had so much trouble with his back in recent years, now to have to deal with multiple fractures and other injuries to his leg, thinking about him having to walk 72 holes to win another tournament, it looks like now his career could finally be done, sadly.
Yeah, the great Ben Hogan was, way back in the day, was in a car accident. I think he was a lot younger. He was able to come back. But, like you mentioned, the age of that. At this point, I think you just hope that he's going to be okay. I know they didn't say it was they said it wasn't life-threatening. So hopefully he can just get out there and just try to live a normal life.
Yeah. If you have any comments that you want to put in there about Tiger Woods, make sure you put them in via YouTube and Facebook Live, and we'll be reading those throughout the show. As for what we'll be talking about throughout the course of today's show, let's before we take a look at today's book, do want to thank everyone who's watching, though, on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Make sure you like, subscribe, and participate, like I mentioned, by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live and via YouTube. Dennis will be reading them throughout the show, and our intern Brian Jelinek will be monitoring the conversation and handling the conversation on Facebook Live and on YouTube as well. Now let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, you can see that Sheila Ford Hamp is making big boss moves. She's sitting in on free agency meetings. Is that a smart move or a sign of SOL, same old Lions? In the third chapter, which dunks can compare to Anthony Edwards' posterization? He had what was perhaps the dunk of the year on Yuta Watanabe over the weekend. We'll show you that dunk and some of the other great dunks in NBA history. In the fourth chapter, will any of Avila's old trade acquisitions rise to greatness this year? If not this year, then, when? Because it's been a while for some of these guys. And then in the fifth chapter, we'll try to win you guys some money with the major wager. Let's start off, though, with the first chapter. And It's just more and more and more good news about the one and only successful local major sports team. Obviously not the Lions, not the Red Wings, not the Pistons, and not the Tigers. They're all dead last in their respective divisions. It's not Michigan or Michigan State football. They each had losing records. It's not even Michigan State basketball, who's in action right now. It seems like all the Spartans do is lose. It's Michigan basketball. The Wolverines are 16-1. They're number 3 in the country, and they just survived what was perhaps their biggest test of the season by beating Ohio State in Columbus over the weekend, 92-87. Not much defense, but a heck of a lot of offense, and Michigan's offense was a little bit better than Ohio State's. Michigan was red hot from outside, particularly in the first half. Hunter Dickinson, unstoppable, 22 points down low. Dennis, they just keep passing all of these tests. What impressed you most about Michigan's most recent win?
Well, that they were able to go on the road, even though it's during the pandemic, and that they were able to knock down 10 threes in the first half. And, that's going to get you going. That's going to get your offense rolling. They weren't able to do that in the second half, but really the last couple games, they did this when they were down coming out of the pandemic against Wisconsin. They roared back, and you thought, wow, this is going to be like a one-possession game. But with like 2 minutes, they made some plays, and then it was just over. And it was kind of the same way against Ohio State. Like, you're thinking, and most people were enjoying the back and forth, and everybody was predicting, like, hey, man, this one's going to come down to the last possession, last shot, back and forth. But with 6.5 to go, Michigan made a series of plays there. And I know Ohio State drained some threes late and made it look a little bit closer, but Michigan really just wore them out there at the end. And, they've got answers all over the floor. They've got, you mentioned Dickinson. They could just continue to feed the post. They got his backup in Austin Davis, who's another big lefty. They pose gigantic matchup problems for the opponent here. And all season long, everybody was talking about it's Gonzaga and Baylor, and everybody else. I think the way Michigan's played right now, from being an unranked team to start the season to looking like they're the best team in the Big Ten, I think they're in that top tier. I think you say right now it's Gonzaga, Baylor, and Michigan and everybody else.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that one play that also stands out at the end of the game on Sunday was the behind-the-back pass by Ohio State to Isaiah Livers for that transition basket. But, my biggest takeaway is that Michigan is really, really good, which is probably another way of saying that Michigan belongs in that same category with Baylor, who's dealing with their own Rona break. I think they're coming back today or tomorrow, something like that. And also Gonzaga. I thought that Michigan going into the game was probably the better team, especially after seeing Ohio State struggle with Penn State. I think it was on Friday or Thursday. Obviously, a lot of teams struggle with Penn State. But I didn't know if Michigan was good enough to beat them in Columbus, even though there were no fans. And for Michigan to lead the majority of the game, lead at halftime, they didn't really stop Ohio State offensively, having given up 87 points. But Ohio State couldn't stop them. The ball movement was great. They kept on finding those open three-point shooters. And when they had the fewer opportunities for open shots in the second half, Hunter Dickinson was unstoppable in the paint. And it's really hard to stop a skilled 7'1" big man in college basketball, and that's what the Buckeyes were tasked with stopping, and they could not do it. Michigan's a team that is not like a traditional Duke or a Kentucky or even a North Carolina team with a bunch of superstars. They just have a bunch of good players who are unselfish, can carry the team for stretches at a time, not for 25 minutes at a time, but for 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time, like Livers, Dickinson, Wagner, and Brown, and then, the only guy that you would think would need a double team or would warrant a double team would be a guy like Dickinson. But if you double him, then somebody else can hurt you. Livers, you probably don't want to play him one-on-one. Guys like Brown and Wagner, do you want to play them one-on-one? Probably not, even though they're not elite one-on-one players. When it comes to guys like Brooks and Smith, they're not the best one-on-one players, but in the team environment, they can pose problems to you. So when you just look at this team as a whole, there isn't that one superstar that you have to say, all right, we have to focus all our attention on. Maybe you would say that's Dickinson, but with so much talent, so much above average, very good, almost great talent, it's going to be they're going to be a problem for everyone in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. And it looks like Dennis froze again. I wonder how long he's been frozen. All right, we'll see if we can reconnect with Dennis. As you can see, we are having a couple of technical difficulties at the moment. See if we can reconnect with Dennis in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Apologize once again for the technical difficulties. We'll try to bring Dennis in one more time. And I think we might have Dennis back now.
Yeah, hey.
There we go.
Yeah, like I was saying, I remember after the game I retweeted you, talking about how good Michigan looked, really, really good, and they have. And the one thing about them is the rest of this the way here. It's not like you can poke holes really in anything. You could at the beginning of the season. You say, hey, well, they played all their games at home. They really haven't played anybody. And then even when they started playing ranked teams, it was like, well, it's like, hey, they really haven't played the top teams in the Big Ten. Well, they just did play Ohio State. Now on Thursday they're playing Iowa. Then they're going to play Indiana on the road, who they beat Iowa at Assembly Hall. They also took Illinois into overtime. And then they'll play that Illinois team, and then Michigan State. 2 games are in 4 days to end the season, so they'll have played all of the big dogs in what looks like the best conference. And if they can hold up there at the end, and heck, if they win these next 5, instead of talking about being on a tier with Gonzaga and Baylor, might talk about them being the number 1 overall seed.
Well, yeah, especially considering the competition. Gonzaga doesn't play anybody. Like their competition is Santa Clara and San Francisco and St. Mary's, which is not a tournament St. Mary's team, or BYU, teams like that, Loyola Marymount. Meanwhile, you look at the top 5 teams in the country, and there are 3 in the Big Ten. Michigan's number 3, Ohio State's 4, Illinois 5. You got all these other ranked teams, so they'll be going through a gauntlet. And I think at some point, if Michigan continues to win, even with the 1 loss, while Baylor and Gonzaga don't have any, even with the 1 loss, you might have to wonder how long it's going to take for these voters to give Michigan, first of all, 1 first-place vote, and perhaps even enough first-place votes to move them up to number 2 or number 1. I did see in the coaches poll, Michigan got exactly 1 first-place vote, but they still don't have any in the AP poll. That could be coming. But Dennis, what is the biggest concern you have regarding this Michigan Wolverines team that is undefeated outside of the game that Eli Brooks missed?
Well, the one thing you start with injuries, foul trouble, cold shooting. Those are the kind of things that happen. Officiating, like those 4 things, you really can't do much about those things in particular. Foul trouble, you start looking to your depth. And then, cold shooting, you say, hey, maybe you can change some things up. And they're not a team that just relies on shooting the 3-point shot. So I think they got a check mark there. Like you look to the game that they lost, they didn't have Eli Brooks. So suddenly their depth at guard was in question there. Shondy Brown had to start, and they had to go to the bench, going with a true freshman in Zeb Jackson. And, they turned the ball over a lot in that game. They had 20 turnovers. So turnovers, and then, I'd say foul trouble, but every team's, Michigan's a pretty deep team. So I'll still look to, in that game, Minnesota really jumped the passing lanes. We're all over them defensively. And I would just say taking care of the ball. If they can take care of the ball, don't turn it over 20 times, and they've been pretty good at that. They're a versatile enough team. They're a deep enough team, but I think that's where you could run into some problems. When you start thinking about the backcourt, and they're not the biggest guys. With Eli Brooks being 6'1" and Mike Smith being 5'10", So if you think about looking towards a team that had some size in the backcourt, that could be something that you would look at. Gonzaga's got some size in the backcourt.
Or a team like Oklahoma State, with a guy like Cade Cunningham running the point at 6'8". One of the things that the Big Ten, I don't think really has is lottery picks when it comes to the conference. They've got a bunch of really good teams, but you don't look at the big man from Iowa as a lottery pick. I don't even think he's going to be a first round. Exactly, yeah, he's not going to be a first round pick. You don't look at Kofi Coburn. You don't look at anybody from Michigan State or Michigan being top 10 picks. You don't or lottery picks. Ohio State. Nobody looks like they're a bunch of lottery picks. So is there a guy that they could face in the tournament who's got real star NBA talent who could take things over and deal Michigan an upset loss, like perhaps a Cade Cunningham if they face them in a second round matchup? And then the other thing, it's something I mentioned earlier a couple of weeks ago, was just kind of what you mentioned with regards to guard play. They get a lot of their offense through their front court. When you look at Livers, when you look at Wagner, and you look at Dickinson, I believe those are their top three scorers. And while Smith and Brooks are very good in terms of engineering the offense, and Brooks had like 15 points against Ohio State, those are not guys that send a shiver down your spine if you're part of the opposition. You're thinking more so about those front court guys playing you. So if there's a game where they need the guards to show up and put up 20 points, maybe because Dickinson gets into foul trouble or something like that, can the guards step up and give you 20 points? I don't know if they can. Now, they might be versatile enough with all the other players on the court to be able to deal with that, because they've shown that versatility throughout the season. But we haven't seen, that I can recall, a game where they would need a Brooks or a Smith to put up 20 to win.
No, Brooks had 17 against Ohio State. You look, they needed his points there. And Smith could shoot. Remember, he was a big-time scorer at Columbia. It was Columbia, but he's got a nice outside shot. So, it's the one thing, like when you go back to last year and you look at the Michigan team, like Xavier Simpson was a really nice guard, but teams just dared him to shoot. They wanted him. Leave him alone. That's where you can slough off somebody. You can't really do that with Michigan, because Mike Smith, his jumper's pretty nice, and Brooks can shoot it as well. I think the other thing, they can all put it on the floor and pass too. So
yes,
you've got the one guy in, the other four out. They're not just set shooters out there. They can put it on the floor, and they can look to
no ball hogs. It looks like everybody's looking for an opportunity to pass.
I'd get that, and I think the one thing, Wagner, if you look at how the NBA scouts have been breaking him down in the mock drafts, he's the one guy in all the Big Ten they think that would be the highest pick if he came out. Now, I think both DeSumo and Garza from Iowa, DeSumo from Illinois, I think those guys look like first-round picks to me, but you play well down the stretch, you play well into the tournament. I think those guys, I think you'll hear those guys' name.
They could be first-round picks, but there's a difference between being selected like 27th by the Nets and being selected 5th by the Cavaliers or something like that.
Yeah, there's no lottery picks. To your point,
yeah.
There's no lottery picks unless Wagner goes out there and runs some kind of Carmelo or Glenn Rice in the tournament or something. But he's not really that kind of player. So I don't see anybody being a lottery pick.
All right, what kind of feedback are we getting?
Well, you know what? I was going to say college basketball. Everybody is like, college basketball is not all that big of a deal. It is here on the Fifth Chapter. Everybody rolling in with a thought or two on Michigan here. Key says impressive outing for Michigan, and it was just a really good game all around. People kept saying that, and I can remember, 4 or 5 years ago when Michigan State would play Wisconsin, and everybody was like, oh man, it was just a good half of basketball game. And then the game, it'd be a one-possession game, and then afterwards, the only thing people could say was like, that was just really good, man, hotly contested, just a good college basketball game. And then there'd be people like, what the hell? Well, I'm tired of everybody just saying this was a good game. Like people looking for something like some controversy or something else. And that's what you saw. You know that there's college basketball fans that are there, but once you get into the last week of February and certainly March, there's a lot more people paying attention to what's going on in college basketball right now. And the college basketball world and college basketball Twitter was taking a look at that game, and they were like, hey, that was just a good game. And it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get a couple of top 5 teams in the country facing off against one another, and having the game go down to the last couple of minutes. A game that was never lopsided by either squad, and I think that's what you're going to get. I don't think anybody came away from that game saying, "Oh, Ohio State sucks; they can't defend their home court." I think everyone thought that Ohio State played well, but Michigan played just a little bit better in that environment, and I think that was evidenced by Ohio State moving up from 5 to 4 despite that loss.
Yeah, here's Brian Jelinek, the intern. Maybe I'll call him Little Brian Chapman because you could have put this one down here. He says, we're in the territory now that if Michigan doesn't win it all, the season is a bust. And you know what? There's a point to that. Michigan has played so well, and here we're talking about if they win their next 5 games and go into the conference tournament, maybe they'd be the number 1 overall seed. At some point, you have to say the expectation is to win it all. Certainly, I would sit here right now and say if they don't get to the Final Four, it would be disappointing. That is how people put it, though. You either win it all or it's a bust. Final Four, you're a bust, so I get that part. I'm ready to go and say right here today that if Michigan doesn't get to the Final Four, looking past and forecasting what would happen in the NCAA tournament, yeah, it would be a disappointment.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not going to agree with Brian Jelinek and say that it's championship or bust. And I think a lot of that is just because of the general expectations of the Michigan fan base and just the fact that it's not a college basketball school. It's a football school. And I think if Michigan doesn't win the championship, if Michigan loses, let's say in the Sweet 16 to a 5 seed, fans are going to be disappointed for a couple of days, but that's it. This is not like if Duke or North Carolina loses to a 5 seed where everyone's going to be thinking about it all summer long. It would be disappointing, and Michigan fans are going to be thinking to themselves 2 days later when the Elite Eight is playing, man, this sucks, we should be playing. But I think that given they don't have lottery picks, even if they get to that point with just 1 loss, the loss would be very disappointing. But fans would not be saying we were supposed to win a championship and we didn't get it. We didn't like. I think Final Four is the highest.
Next 5 games, and then they won 3 more. They were cutting down the nets for a regular season championship. Then they go to Indianapolis and they roll through the Big Ten, and they're cutting down the nets, and then they're sitting there as a 1 seed. I think I'm not totally just with you like, it would just be a little bit of a disappointment. It would be a major disappointment if they got knocked out in the Sweet 16, especially if they go through and win these next 5, 6, 7, 8, and they go into the NCAA tournament with just 1 loss. I think people will have all their eyes on the Final Four, and that's it, man. When you only have 1 loss in a season and you go through and you're smashing opponents like this and you're playing in the is said to be the best conference. You're supposed to do it with what's ranked comes responsibility, and that would be ranked pretty good, number 1 seed, only 1 loss on the year. And it's the one thing, like in years past, you could say, the Big Ten. Like you talked about the one thing, like they don't have lottery picks or something, but you can't dog the conference, you can't dog the team, you can't dog the depth or anything else. So you're going in there. This is a team that you do expect to be in the championship game. It's tough. That's the way college basketball works, though.
Well, here's the one thing about the conference. There is a lot of talk about how the conference is rated high. You got the 3 teams in the top 5. All these teams have been in and out of the top 25 all season long. And I think Penn State's like 5 games below 500, but they're still considered one of the top 50 teams in the country or something like that. But this is like the 2nd or 3rd year in a row where everyone's talking about how great the Big Ten is, and still the Big Ten hasn't won a championship since like 2001. They had a team in the Final Four the last time we had a Final Four 2 years ago, which was Michigan State, and Michigan has been to the championship, to the championship game a couple times in the last decade. But in terms of being the last team to cut down the nets, the Big Ten is never that team.
Michigan State 2000. You're right.
Yeah, 2000, not 2001. That's correct.
It's all right. It was close enough. I wasn't even going to correct you. I thought, what the hell? All right. Keith says the kid Liddell was the best player on the floor. Michigan's so deep, but they rarely get into foul trouble either. Yeah, would have to go deep in the tournament, or it would be highly disappointing.
I think the expectation, just to be clear, the expectation should be Final Four. I'm not going to go so far as to say title or bust.
David says, what's up, guys? The Michigan team reminds me of the going-to-work Pistons. And he says, love the show. All right, going to work Pistons. What was the hallmark of the going to work Pistons team?
Well, there were two. There was number one, it was great defense, the best defense in the NBA, and number two, not having a true superstar. I think they certainly matched that second part.
Yeah, that's right. It's always like the sum is greater than the parts kind of thing. Like you needed all of that, and they were like a one-off in the NBA, because the NBA is about, hey, who's the best player? Who's the superstar? Or who's the superstar?
The big two,
that
the
has
big
a
three.
Sidekick. Right. And the Pistons weren't that. They were a unit. They were five. They were going to play defense. They were gonna work hard throughout the regular season. I was like, yeah, I mean, that's why Andre Drummond never had a chance here, because he's like most NBA players, he'd take nights off and things. And
he's taking the last couple of weeks off in Cleveland.
That just wasn't happening. Like when you have the bad boys, and then you have the going to work Pistons, and then you had the Andre Drummond. It was kind of like, Now, and that's the one thing, by the way, that I like about Dwayne Casey. Even though the team's one of the worst record-wise, they do get out there and they fight and they go to work, like the going to work Pistons. And I respect that from Dwayne Casey, how he's getting his guys to play like that.
Pistons, by the way, up 46-42 in Orlando in the second quarter.
Nice update. Dennis really needs to get rid of that AOL, LOL. Yeah, you know what? I know that we didn't pay for like the premium $1 million a month, hardwire everything in type internet, but we've got it boosted up there pretty good. And the kids and the wife, they're all down eating dinner right now, so I'm surprised. But it just happens once in a while out here in Dexter, up on the Peach Mountain Studios, man. It just happens. What can I say? Keith, don't get blown out. It's another reason why I like Michigan basketball better than Michigan football, because they can actually beat Ohio State. Touche!
Yeah, so many people were tweeting about that over the weekend. Hey, we finally beat Ohio State in something.
Sideshow Raj, it's good to see him on the live chat. He says Livers or Wagner would look good in a Pistons jersey. What's your thoughts about that, Chapman?
I'd rather have Sadiq Bey than either of those two right now. And if you're a Pistons fan, the goal is not, hey, let's see if we can get some more role players. Like, Bey looks like he's gonna emerge into being perhaps a solid role player. Is Stewart gonna perhaps be a role player? He might be. Jeremy Grant looks like he could be an all-star, but the Pistons don't need, do you project Wagner or Livers to be even at an all-star snub level in the NBA?
No, and if we're talking about the Pistons drafting him, it wouldn't be with one of their, what looks like would be a lottery pick this year. I mean, let's say it's going to be a lottery pick this year, so I wouldn't take Wagner like at 10. The Pistons might be picking at 5. They're not going to take Livers, but you get around in the second round. Could you do worse than Isaiah Livers? I mean, his shot looks pretty good. He's got an intermediate J. I like him, so I think he could add value for a team. And you know what? He's a lot like Sadiq Bey. Sadiq Bey is just he's more talented than from what I've seen from Sadiq Bey. Even though that they don't have him ranked in the first round. Sadiq Bey can shoot. He's a spot up set shooter.
Yeah,
that's what he looks like he can do. Livers can put it on the floor. He can shoot from distance. I'll predict that Livers would be a better pro than Sadiq Bey.
All right. Well, if that's the case, maybe they should take him.
Yeah, not in the top 10.
No, definitely not.
Where did Bey go? Like 19, 17?
He went number 19.
Jelinek has got more here. He says, understand that Michigan isn't a basketball school. With how good this team is, it's championship or bust. They have looked damn good all year. Michigan fans don't exist. Yeah, you know what? College basketball is weird. Like, if we were down in Chapel Hill, I don't know how many places around the country where people are around just grinding out, talking college hoops. I think that's anywhere. I mean, that's it. Maybe up in East Lansing, they do on their talk shows. But for the most part, like if you're talking about
probably
Detroit,
in Kentucky, probably in North Carolina, and in Kansas.
Well, how about this? Like you say it about Michigan. Michigan State, all the Final Fours, 22 straight appearances in the tournament, the championship in 2000, and the 21st century, that Michigan State has been a blue blood. They've been an elite college basketball program. No, they're looking for that second championship. But how many people are burning up the phone lines talking about Tom Izzo? And they talk about, hey, did you go to Michigan State? Hey, is Tom Izzo too physical with his players? That's about it. Most people aren't sitting around, grinding out, talking about Michigan State hoops. And, they've been at the top of the class, for 20 years
A
now.
lot of them would rather talk about the greatness for a time of Mark D'Antonio's teams.
Yeah, let's face it. Like, we're a great sports town, but we like our pro teams. And in college, it's about, hey, where did you go to school? And, football is king. Let's go. That's it.
Yep.
We got some scoring updates. Jelinek saying MSU leads the Illini by 10 at the half.
Whoa.
Boy, I hope you didn't take Illinois minus 6.5.
Ooh, okay.
Wings and Preds, no score in the first, and the Stones are up in, he just says 3:23 left. That's all it says. That must be till
the half. All right, let's turn the page to the second chapter.
Before that, I want to look at Facebook and just say,
okay.
Beth asked, how would you grade Howard as a head coach this year?
A+.
Yeah, if they don't hand out the Naismith College Basketball Coach of the Year today, but if they did, he would get my vote, and I think he would be a unanimous choice for Coach of the Year. The Ohio State coach was right there with him. If Ohio State would have won that game, he'd have said, hey, maybe he'd be the coach. But right now, it is Juwan Howard. They say, checks all the boxes. He's checking them all, and checking them all twice so far. So, yeah,
absolutely.
He's doing a fantastic job. And he got 3 McDonald's All-Americans. He's got the best recruiting class next year. And 3 of his players, if they would have had a McDonald's game this year, they don't because of COVID. They would have been playing in the game. All right, I'm ready, Chap.
All right, let's turn that page to the second chapter.
That gets us to the Lions. NFL football. And Lions owner Sheila Hamp is sitting in on personnel meetings, free agent meetings, and it has Detroit abuzz. Good idea or bad idea? Sheila Hamp sitting in on personnel meetings.
And if you're wondering about where this information came from, Chris Speilman had an appearance on a Detroit radio station earlier today, and here is an excerpt of what he had to say. People ask me all the time, how much is Sheila involved? Well, Sheila has been involved by being in all these personnel meetings. She sat in 2 days of offensive free agency meetings and defensive free agency meetings. I had a great office when I got there, and all of a sudden, I'm in the corner next to the exit door, and I said, what happened? Well, Sheila wants this office because it's right in the middle of everything, which is awesome. And it just goes to show her commitment to what she wants and how involved she is being in these meetings, giving her opinion, which is fun. And it's cool to see the commitment that she has and that Rod Wood and Mike Disner and everybody has. But everybody understands that as far as the personnel go, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, it's on them. They've got to sign their names to that. So that's the full story with regards to Sheila Ford Hamp sitting in on these meetings. And one of the first thoughts I had in my head was, what else does Sheila Ford Hamp do? Like, does she have any other jobs besides owning the Detroit Lions? So I went to Wikipedia, and it said that she owns the Lions and is a businesswoman, and it didn't say what business she had, so I assumed that perhaps her only business is owning the Lions. And from that standpoint, if she's got nothing else to do besides be rich and go to the spa and drive her Bentley around Ann Arbor because she lives in Ann Arbor, I guess she wouldn't drive a Bentley. She'd drive her Ford F-150 because she's in the Ford family. Then
that'd be a nice story.
Yeah, what is Sheila Ford doing with this Bentley? How come she's not driving a Ford Taurus or whatever the case may be, or a Lincoln? But, if she's got nothing else to do, then I can see why she would want to see what's going on. It just still looks really bad if she's sitting in on these meetings. I look at this as being same old Lions. On the surface, maybe it doesn't seem too bad to see her sitting in on meetings, or if she's just sitting in on Zoom calls with other members of the front office. But she moved Chris Spielman's offense way down over there by the exit. All the way down in the corner. And Chris Spielman even said, what happened? Like, he shows up to work one day, go into his office, and he says, what happened? And somebody had to tell him, oh, the boss, Sheila Ford Hamp, moved your stuff over there so she could be right in the middle with, I guess, Wood on one side, Holmes on the other side, Disner on one side, and then Speilman way down there in the corner. It seems like she's meddling and she wants to make her presence felt when she probably knows less than 1,000th of what the other guys know altogether. You know, having your boss breathing down your neck when you're trying to do your business is kind of intimidating sometimes. Having the boss say, you know, I want this player, or here's my opinion on this offensive free agent. Here's my opinion on this defensive free agent. I don't know how constructive it is. The other thing, I'm sure you're going to point this out, is obviously the Lions have been known to have front office staff brown nose and suck up to the owners all the time. And what does Speilman do? He goes on the radio, says that Sheila Ford is involved, and talks about how great it is that she kicked him out to the end and put her office right in the middle and was asking all these questions and want to be right in the mix. That seems SOL and not in a good way.
Yeah, you know what, unless down the line we hear a story about, you know what, Hamp was sitting in there and she was like, she did not want the Lions to get a long-term deal with Kenny Galladay because she said she didn't like his Instagram posts or something like that, and she starts meddling like there, well, then there's going to be an issue. But I don't see any problem with her sitting in these meetings right here. I think the one thing about Hamp, like you mentioned it, like, Lions ownership shouldn't get any kind of free pass or any kind of benefit of the doubt. So I get that part. And, you know, Sheila Hamp, before she even set foot in Ford Field, you know, she's already got one strike against her, and that's her maiden name. She can't do anything about that. I think the other strike is that, her bizarre inclusion of Rod Wood and everything. But, is that going to be that big of a deal? It's the one thing to me that sticks out like a sore thumb. But you know what? I don't think her sitting in there, seeing how the business is run, and, she wants to, drive from she's got to have something to do. So sitting in those meetings, I think it's fine. I think it's a good idea.
Well, look, I think there's a difference between getting an update on a daily basis about what's going on in your business, having either Rod Wood or Brad Holmes give you a phone call on the way home from work as they're driving through Metro Detroit saying, hey, just wanted to give you a call as I'm headed to my house. This is what we talked about. We were talking about these players and all that. But not just to have her sitting in on the meetings like a wallflower, but it seemed like she was, based on what Speilman was saying, she was giving her opinions and actively participating. That's where I think the problem is. These other guys are being hired to handle the football business, and I understand her wanting to see what's going on and sit in on Zoom calls or sit in on if they're having actual board meetings. But to sit there and give opinions, that seems like SOL, when it doesn't seem like she's got some great wealth of expertise. Like Jerry Jones, he used to be, he's the general manager and the owner of the team. He's a lot different than any other owner in the NFL. Most of these other owners, if not all these other owners, they need to just sit back and chill.
I'll tell you, if I hear what you're saying, like if the news would have been, Rod Wood's sitting in there and he's actively involved, to me, I would have rolled my eyes and said, oh my God, come on. But that it's Sheila, until I hear a story that she's affecting some kind of decision. Like, and I know you're making the point that maybe she is because she's sitting in there and people are, she's kind of looking over their shoulder. She's getting involved that way.
She's booting Chris Speilman down to the end.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that a big deal that she moved his office? Like she wants to be right there.
Well, it's about
the
where,
bee or whatever.
Yeah, she wants her presence to be felt. He said that she's right in the middle of it. I would assume that she would want her office on a higher level, like, oh, my underlings are down there, but I've got this office high atop Ford Field where I can sit back and get my feet rubbed. But she wants to be right there in the middle. If somebody answers the phone because it's like the Texans calling, she wants to look over and then run over and see who Brad Holmes is talking to. That's what I'm envisioning. Maybe. She wants to know what's going on at all times. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
Well, I think it's
probably bad.
I think it's fair because of this organization to wonder if they're if this is a bad move. I think that's fair. Like for myself, I don't have like if it would have been Wood doing all that, I would have said, "Oh my God, this is a disaster." Then
You
it's
can't
Sheila
stand
doing
Wood.
it. Well, I just like the whole thing has been over a million times.
No.
It's not like she doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. The Fords don't get the benefit of the doubt. The Lions don't get the benefit of the doubt. So it's fair to wonder if she's meddling or if she's looking over people's shoulders or if she's going to be a problem. But I don't have a problem with it myself. I don't have that feeling that it's a bad idea. But if it comes out like that she's meddling in there, well, then you'll be right about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that whether it's via free agency because she was sitting in free agent meetings or via the draft that she overruled or she had influence or she broke a tie or something like that. If she,
I think it's fair
I think
at a news conference. I think it's fair at a news conference to ask Holmes, to ask Campbell what her involvement is like. If she ever got up there and was
they're gonna kiss her ass,
answering any questions, well, that's true. But if she got up there and say, "Hey, I don't know, like, hey, could you break down Trey Lance for me? I don't know, like, what are you thinking about? His arm strength? Or are you thinking about moving down? Like, I don't know if she's ready to answer any of those questions.
Yeah.
Let's see what the feedback.
Well, I was just going to say real quickly, I think it's great that she wants to be involved and she wants to understand what's going on with her football team and not just sit back and collect the money. The issue, though, is about her influence and her trying to guide the football decision makers on what to do. You should want to know what's going on. But to sit there and talk about which free agents you want and don't want to give your opinions, that's where I think Lions fans should be concerned.
All right, let's see what everybody else has to say. Beth says, why is Tom Goris criticized for not being involved? She should be involved when there's a major decision like trading Stafford or something like that.
Well, Tom Goris doesn't seem like he's involved that much. But the one thing that he does do is he allows his front office to work. Like Stan Van Gundy wanted Blake Griffin. He let the front office do the job. Troy Weaver wanted to make 80 different maneuvers in the first week that he had an opportunity to do something. He let them do the job. You can tell that he appears to be a laissez-faire owner. Is that a positive? I mean, I think that most fans would like him to seem more interested in the team and not live in Los Angeles and then just show up for the first game, show up for the trade deadline, show up for the last game, and that's about it. But I think it's fair to bring up that criticism. But is there a medium between what Goris is doing and Ford Hamp is doing? Yeah, and from what SVG at least was saying, and I think what Casey and others would say is that they would have regular conversations with Tom Goris to let him know what's going on, and I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, my thought on Goris is he's been delusional up to this point. He's coming in there acting like, hey, we got our superstar. Yeah, we got a playoff push, and everybody's looking at this knowing that you're just delaying the inevitable, which is having to go through some painful years if they want to be back on top. He always felt like he was involved and didn't understand how the league worked, and whether he thought he was selling a bill of goods or he's just out there being Mr. Positive because he paid $327 million for him and they're worth like over $1 billion. He's like, hey man, I got the Midas touch. Why don't I jump in here and talk about getting Blake Griffin? All right, Keith says, I think it's cool that she wants to be involved in the team. If I were a owner, I would want to be involved. As long as she's not making any personnel decision, it's her freaking team. Mm-hmm. But that's not cool moving Speilman's office that far away. What's the deal with that? Does that smell bad or something? So there you go. Keith going on the office move as well. I could care less where Speilman's office is. This is from Jelinek. I don't want her influencing any decisions about who the Lions will bring in. This has SOL written all over it. Again, is this Jelinek or is this Chapman? I don't know.
Hey, he's got a great first name, so he's putting in some great comments.
He's like a little Brian Chapman.
Well, he knows. We know which one of us he looks up to.
That's true. Let's turn the page.
All right, let's now turn the page to the third chapter, and that takes us to one of the great moments in, at least at the start of this NBA season. And Anthony Edwards, he was the first overall pick of the 2020 NBA draft. And over the weekend, here is how he made a name for himself and went viral.
Timberwolves will take off a little bit of time here. Ooh, they were lucky that wasn't turned over. Anthony Edwards, that time he does finish with the exclamation point. He's filthy. There have been very few in-game dunks that have looked like that. Put that on a poster. Timberwolves will take
one of the nastiest dunks that you'll ever see, and we'll just run that for you on mute while we talk over it. But I mean, it's only February, but that is probably going to end up being the dunk of the year when we get to December 31st. The ultimate posterization. You got to feel bad for Yuta Watanabe. And it was actually part of a feature that ESPN ran recently on SportsCenter about posterizing people, where I think they said that Dr. J had the first poster dunk. But for those unfamiliar with that term, that's a still shot of a player dunking on someone that's put onto a poster. A lot of kids have those posters in their bedrooms. But Dennis, number one, what did you think about that dunk? And what are some of your favorite in-game dunks of all time?
Yeah, well, I thought it was a nice punch there by Edwards. I think the story, though, about, what did the guy have? Half dozen points and they lost the game. So it's not like he had a very good game other than that. Great dunk, and he's a fabulous player. But in the end, his team didn't win. He didn't have a very good game. So he just comes up with one big highlight. Hopefully he'll be known for a little bit more than just coming up as a rookie and having some posterizing dunk. I never look at a defender, or rarely when I look at a defender, it takes some guts to get in there and try to protect the rim when somebody's coming in trying to throw one down. One, yeah, you know that you're putting yourself in a precarious situation. The other one is that, you know, you're going to end up getting posterized when you know who can get up and who can throw it down there. There's a lot of guys that are, you know, going like this and getting out of the way. So I'll give credit to that guy for standing in there. As far as, you know, guys dunking in traffic, I mean, that's the name of the game, you know, going back. You know, thing is, watching Dr. J do it, Dominique would dunk on guys, and he would would throw moves in there as he was doing it. So, you know, those are the early days of guys doing it. But when it comes down to it, you know, Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, I mean, those four right there, those are guys that I love dunking on people in the game. Vince Carter's the greatest dunker, whether it's going to be in a dunk contest, whether it's going to be out in the open floor, or whether it's going to be on somebody. And, you know, I could probably pull up 100 Jordan dunks, but I went to two of what I think are the most popular. One, when you ask about somebody dunking on somebody, it was Vince Carter. Air Sanity? Vince Sanity?
Vinsanity.
Vinsanity. What's Air Sanity? Vinsanity. Doing in the Olympics over Weiss. We got that cut?
Yeah, let's take a look at that right now. Nastiness. I mean, to see Vince Carter jump over a 7-footer, he did kind of push his head out of the way, but to have his crotch clear that man's head for the dunk, yeah, I can see why you put that up there with one of your best dunks of all time. And that took place in Sydney in the 2000 Olympics, and I'm sure that all the people in Sydney were saying, wow, look at this American jumping over another person for a dunk.
Yeah, I think the thing that you mentioned there, the guy's 7 foot. I mean, he wasn't jumping over Spud Webb.
No.
Jumping over a 7-footer. Damn.
Yep. And what else did you have?
Yeah, you know, it's just been over a year since Kobe passed away. And I was looking at a lot of his dunks, like a lot of people watching different games with Kobe. But my favorite is he gets this long baseball pass down the sideline, and then he not only just goes in and dunks on somebody, he goes around the back and then he goes to the opposite side of the rim and throws it down. This is my favorite dunk from Kobe Bryant.
Yep, here it is, and it's off of a free throw as well.
Off the bench, so aside from Juwan Howard, he's their second leading scorer. They need some help.
Long run out by Kobe Bryant. Behind.
Boom.
What did I just see?
You just saw what Kobe does.
I mean,
and that's bring people
for
to their
Kobe
feet.
Bryant
It's a sensational
for
play.
first of all, for Robert Horry to catch this, here it is again. Robert Horry catches the ball after a made free throw and flings it in one motion down the court. A lot of credit needs to go to Horry, but yeah, Kobe Bryant behind the back with the dunk. That's definitely up there with some of the best of all time. When I was thinking about some of the great dunks of all time, I actually thought of two involving the Pistons. And the first was actually from last season, and it's about a guy that we talk about a lot. You want to give this guy, the next 10 years to figure out if he's going to be a star player. And I'm saying,
2
hey,
years.
start showing me something. It was Pistons versus Cavaliers in Cleveland. Sekou Doumbouya introduces himself to Tristan Thompson Kardashian with some authority. Where is that video? Here we go.
Snell takes the inbounds pass. Doumbouya gets run off the line. Down! Oh, my goodness.
And he steps over him.
As he was in the restricted area.
The closeout was not good, and that led to double T.
He stares
inside.
at
And
Tristan
that's
Thompson
where
Kardashian
the closeout was not even
and
a
steps
closeout.
over him. One more look at it.
Sekou with a little show into the lane.
Look at the bench.
And one. There's a finish
I'm
for
too
you.
old to
Look
say
at the
this, but I'm
fade.
going to say it anyways.
Oh,
He
my
did
gosh.
catch a body there.
Yes, he did. Absolute nastiness there from Sekou Doumbouya. And I thought at that moment that was going to be his coming out party, the first of many moments like that. And he's been kind of a disappointment ever since then. The other one that I have from the Pistons goes back to, March 10th of 2013, Pistons versus Clippers. Pistons are getting blown out in the first half. They had a sorry team with guys like Kyle Singler, Greg Monroe, and Brandon Knight. And the Clippers had stars like Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and of course, DeAndre Jordan. Check out this monster dunk.
They don't even get to run it, but I'll show you how to coach. Here comes Chris Paul. The lob.
Ooh!
What a monster jam by DeAndre Jordan.
Look at the kids.
Look at Blake. Look at the bench. Lamar Odom walked all the way down to the other
And the
end.
face.
Wait, it's
Just a
dead.
sheepish
That
grin on
was-
his face. I want to see it
They had to
again.
pick
This
him
could
up
be
off
as
the
good as
floor with
anyone
a
we saw from Blake.
shovel.
Absolutely.
And what's great is I was listening to another some more commentary about this. DeAndre Jordan's a lefty, and he hammered that down with his right hand.
That is something, folks.
He got up so high, eyes at rim level, and yeah, you did need to pretty much pick out a casket for Brandon Knight after that. I mean, that's you got to give Knight a little bit of credit for trying to go up there, but I mean, this is a guy who a couple years after that moment signed a $70 million deal with the Suns. So he's filthy rich. His last game in the NBA to this point was last year with the Pistons after that Andre Drummond trade, and he has not been signed with the team since. So I don't feel sorry for him monetarily, but he's forever going to be remembered as the guy who was the victim of that DeAndre Jordan posterization.
You know what? I don't have video of this. Like, I've never dunked myself. Certainly not on a 10-foot rim. I could barely even jump up in my heyday and grab the rim. But I did get dunked on one time, and it was like the guy was setting the pick up at the top of the key, and I just totally got picked. You know, they threw the – and so I ran to try, like, just running up there with my hands up, and this guy just crushed it. A guy after the game said, yeah, he just smashed that right in your face. And if there was video of that, that would be something to put out here. But I don't think we have any of Henry Ford Community College against Schoolcraft back in 1989. So
yeah, it's probably a good
I think
thing
it's just
for you.
I don't know if there was any cameras running that day. I'm glad there wasn't.
Yeah. What are some of the other moments in sports where someone can absolutely embarrass somebody like a posterization that you think about?
Well, it was interesting. You asked me this question a little bit earlier. I'm all in for dunks and everything else, but like I said, I give guys a little bit of credit, actually, even Brandon Knight. Like, if that would have been DeAndre Jordan, like, he actually put his arms up. Like, some guys just get out of the way and play Ole defense. We've seen that before. I think when you're getting down to this, you're talking about embarrassing. The one is, like, if you if you have a championship, if you've won in the playoffs, and then actually the scoreboard. I don't know how many times you're out playing pickup or something, and some guy's out there put some move on you and scores or something, and he's running down the floor acting a fool, and you're like, you know what, dude, you're down 10-2. Like, we're letting you do this, or take your ass to the sideline. You're about to lose the game. Mm-hmm. So it's always about the scoreboard. But the biggest thing, and I know because I looked at your rundown of the videos. The biggest thing that you're going to get embarrassed about in a game, and especially in the NBA, is if somebody puts you on roller skates and breaks your ankles and you fall down to the ground. There's nothing more. You can put yourself in position. A guy can blow by you. But if you go so much where you wiggle yourself and you crack in half and fall on the floor, that's an embarrassment.
Yeah, and you know what? Why don't we bring Brandon Knight back into the equation, because he had his ankles broken in the Rising Stars game when he was a Rising Star against Kyrie Irving. Yeah. Whoop! And he hit the shot. That was the key there, because if Kyrie Irving misses the shot, it's not that big a deal. After you break somebody's ankles, you can't celebrate until after you hit the shot.
Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, I mean, he's annoying. I get sick and tired of him, but his handle is the best in NBA history. And this isn't the pick on Brandon Knight segment, but he's been a big victim. One move that always has the ability to embarrass an opponent is a stiff arm, and some of them are just little stiff arms that kind of like give the rusher or the ball carrier an extra couple of inches, an extra couple of feet. But one that comes to mind, or the one that came to mind when I was thinking about this, was Derrick Henry against the same old Lions during the most recent NFL season a couple of months ago. Check out this stiff arm and how he was able to embarrass a Lion. Just a bitch slap. Oh.
Don't get aggressive, and then if you're running,
man, you're a lion. Get out my bleeping face.
You cannot tackle Derrick Henry when you both are running sideways against each other. You gotta go take out his.
I remember I was doing a show at the time, and I saw that, and I was just like, oh! And my co-host was like, oh, I'm trying to talk right now. And I was like, no, you have to see this stiff arm, because it was just...
You were on with Caputo?
No, it was not on with Caputo. Another raspy voice individual.
It sounded like, the thing I like the most, I don't know how to do it myself, is you Photoshop somebody else's head, like on the Lions, and you show them going, it can be anybody, if you want to discard them.
Yeah, the one last one I want to show is actually from baseball, and I think it's kind of underrated, and that is stealing home. Nobody does that better than Bryce Harper, and I thought the way that he did that as a rookie against Cole Hamels was awesome, and I'll show you what happened in this video. Cole Hamels was not happy that Bryce Harper was getting so much attention. I'll mute the video while we play. So he hit Bryce Harper on the first pitch that they had against one another. Bryce Harper eventually gets around to third base, and what does he do? He steals home. And I remember watching that game live and thinking how amazing it was that Bryce Harper could get drilled in the back in his first plate appearance against Cole Hamels and, not charge the mound, but wait till he got around to third base, and on his first career stolen base, he stole home. I thought that was a boss move.
That is a boss move. Let's clean up some of the live chat as it goes off here. Start from the bottom. Keith said Jordan dunked over a guy that is at least 7 inches shorter. Good dunk, but whatever. Impressive dunks are like when Jordan dunks over Ewing. Jelinek says, I got dunked on in IM at Western Michigan. I haven't been in the paint since. David says, play the Shaq dunk and we'll see. Shaq, I love watching Shaq dunk. Ripping it down, and he'll push the guy.
Yeah, push him into the first row.
The Dudley one that he's talking about right there. I'm with you on that dunk. That is an awesome one. I was going to look for that one myself. Jelinek said LeBron's no regard for human life over Kevin Garnett is an all-timer as well. So there you go. Some other famous dunks. I do remember one time watching Steve Smith when he played for Michigan State way back in the day. I was sitting there on the couch by myself, and they were playing Iowa. And he went down the lane and just went up, and all 4 guys converted on, and boom, and he just punched it down. And I jumped out of my, off my couch, and I said, so awesome. I'm there pumping my fists by myself. I'm like, wow, man, I'll never forget this. And you know what? I've never forgot it.
There you go. Yeah. And that's kind of where when you talk about, well, what's the score? It's 10-2, but somebody made a great play. 10 years later, you're not going to be thinking about, I lost a pickup game to somebody 21-6 at the park. You're going to be thinking about, oh, remember when I made that great move?
Fair enough. Let's turn the page.
Yeah, we'll turn the page now to the 4th chapter.
And that's going to get us to the Tigers and asking you the question of 5 Tigers. I thought this was a creative question by Chapman when he threw it my way. 5 Tigers who were acquired via trade. Who will shine this year? So you got Isaac Paredes. You have Daz Cameron, Franklin Perez, and Jake Rogers. They all came over in the JV deal. And then Jacoby Jones, who the Tigers got from the Pirates for Joakim Soria. They got Paredes for what? Avila and Justin Wilson?
Yeah, he came with Jamer Candelario.
Ooh, maybe not a nice one there. Nice one there for Al Avila. All right, out of those 5, who would you pick to shine this year?
Well, and let me just say this. The reason that I went with those 5 is because they've been these aren't like recent acquisitions. These guys have been in the organization for a long time. That Justin Wilson and Alex Avila for Candelario and Paredes trade was July 31st, 2017. So 4 seasons ago. The Verlander trade for Rogers, Cameron, and Franklin Perez, August 31st, 2017. And then the Joakim Soria for Jacoby Jones trade, July 30th, 2015. So we're talking about 4 years ago, and 6 years ago. And so far, only Jamer Candelario, because of what he did last year, not the 2 previous years, has started to emerge into a guy that you can count on a regular basis. And, when I look at these guys, Tigers fans can't be sitting around waiting 6 years to see if Jacoby Jones is going to be a major league hitter and actually stay healthy. He's not a young prospect anymore. He turns 29 in 2.5 months. This is the prime of his career, supposedly, so I'm not high on him. You look at the 3 guys they got in the Verlander trade, and it looks like they're going to get nothing for him because Rogers made his debut in 2019, couldn't hit, couldn't play defense. Despite the woes at catcher last year, wasn't even brought up from the taxi squad. He turns 26 in less than 2 months. Time to give up on him. Daz Cameron's 24. He made his debut this past year and hit a .193 with 3 extra base hits and 57 at-bats. Not high on him. And Franklin Perez was supposed to be the star of the Verlander trade. All he's done is get hurt. He has not thrown a pitch above A ball since entering the Tiger system in 2017. He's 23, so he's young, but in that time, all he's done is get hurt. Paredes is the youngest. He just turned 22 last week. He wasn't good last year, and apparently he went to a slump when he played in the Caribbean World Series. But because he's young, because he's got, less than 40 games under his belt, I'm going to say that he's got the best opportunity to prove himself. That said, the Tigers decided that Jeimer Candelario is going to start off at third base in spring training, which puts Paredes in a real hole. If you got Nico Goodrum, who's manning first base, or somebody else, as opposed to... Yeah. Well, if it's anybody but Candelario is the point, then Paredes is in trouble because he's not starting at second where you got Scope. He's not starting at short where you got Willie Castro, and he's not going to play outfield. It's third base or bust for him. But I'm going to say I'm most optimistic about him because it's got to be somebody.
Yeah, it's got to be somebody. I'm with you on all the guys that I wish it would. If I could pick one to shine, I would pick Franklin Perez. That's what I would hope. But he hasn't thrown a pitch, so I can't pick him. Jacoby Jones I like. Jacoby Jones is, he worked on his swing. He shortened it up. His problem is he just can't stay healthy. I know the metrics weren't great on him for his defense 2 years ago, but he could track it. He looks like a plus center fielder to me, and that's what you need at Comerica Park. And I think that he could come up and he can hit a little bit. So I have not given up on Jacoby Jones. In fact, I think he can be an everyday center fielder.
Well, he can be, but is he going to be any good? That's the point. And the last year I think was his best offensive year for when he played because he was hitting in the 260s. Before that, he was hitting in the 230s, but he only played 30 games. So half the season in the 260s. I mean, is that really emerging?
Hey, look, man, you throw the guys out there it's not like we're taking a look at a bunch of future stars here, but
yeah, and they were supposed to be.
Yeah, well, you're right, and that shows you what happens in baseball. I think they say, if you get 10 prospects, it's kind of like a batting average. If you can get 3 of them, that are going to be good players, not even talking about superstars, you're doing well, and that's.
Well, it depends. It seems like when the Padres get prospects or the Rays get prospects, they pan out. When Avila brings in prospects, oh, I like this guy, I like that guy. Well, guess what? The guy comes up and is struggling to get to the Mendoza line. Oh, we got a defensive star and Jake Rogers who just needs to hit a little bit. He couldn't even hit a little bit, and he was letting all these balls get to the backstop. Avila, I think, is more the exception than the rule. All these guys being scrubs years later, he's the exception.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to bat for Avila.
Good.
Brian says, is Alex Fiedo still alive? I remember that we took him 18th overall a few years back, and I hadn't heard his name since. I think he's got Tommy John. Yeah,
he had surgery. I mean, he was always behind Manning Mize and certainly Skubal after his emergence 2 years ago. But, I think he's probably about the fifth or so best prospect among starting pitchers. He's behind Wentz, and yes, he did undergo surgery.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Tigers team that's not going to be competing for anything this year. I was hoping that they were going to be 500, but that looks like a complete pipe dream. So we'll have those predictions coming up. I mean, we all like baseball. I mean, you're going to be watching every single game this year, and a team that is going to probably lose 90 games.
You'll definitely lose 90 games. It's how deep into the 90s, and are they going to get to 100?
That wasn't a question. You're going to be watching them a night in and night out?
I'll watch as many. I mean, the big key for me is whether or not Sinclair / Fox Sports / Bally is going to get their deal done with YouTube. I mean, I don't want to have to. I'm not going to be running to the casino every single night or the sports bar every single night to watch the Tigers play. I'll be listening to them on the radio, and I'll try to watch as many games as I can, but I would like to be able to watch them from the comfort of my living room.
Spoiler alert. With my pick tonight, I'm not going to be running to the casino anytime soon either. Let's get to that major wager.
Yeah, that's the fifth chapter. Before we get to your pick today, remind us of what you picked on Thursday.
Well, I had a good pick on Thursday. I picked Iowa against Wisconsin. I liked the Hawkeyes in that game. They were getting a point or two. I didn't need it, and they won that easily. Unfortunately, tonight, I looked at the menu and I saw Michigan State sitting there, and I have not done a good job picking Michigan State games this year. But I saw that 6.5, and I thought, do I want to take a Michigan State team that went on the road, beat Indiana, Tom Izzo's, willing them to get it to the – no, I said no. I remember in Iowa wiping the floor with them, and I said, you know what, I think Illinois is going to do the same thing. So I picked them. Watched the beginning of that game. Illinois came out, dropped the 3 down, looked pretty good. But then all of a sudden, Michigan State started making some baskets. And I know since we've been sitting here, Jelinek's been throwing up the scores. It doesn't look really good for me right now.
What's the score right now? Or at least according to the last Jelinek comment.
I just got a text from somebody asking me if I was watching it, and they said State's killing them.
Oh, wow.
Michigan fan. So,
well, that's a sign that it's
pretty
not.
Quick. It is they are killing them. 54-36. 11.5 to go.
All right, well, on Thursday, I had a nice pick. I selected Eastern Washington, Rodney Stuckey's alma mater, to cover 8 points against their opposition, and they won easily. Tonight, I've got the Atlanta Hawks -8 against the Cavaliers because the Cavs always get blown out, period. The Cavs are on a 10-game losing streak. In 9 of those games, they've lost by at least 16 points. And I think it's clear they're the worst team of the NBA. Looking right now at my phone, it is in the third quarter in Cleveland, and Cleveland's having a respectable game. They're only down 3, 81-78. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just fall flat on their face throughout the remainder of the third quarter and then the fourth quarter. And really, it's interesting, if you look at the Cavaliers, it's very similar to what happened to the Pistons. The Pistons were not a good team, but then they traded Andre Drummond away, and they went 1-11 down the stretch. The Cavaliers weren't good, and then once Andre Drummond and the Cavaliers agreed that they weren't going to play him anymore until they traded him away, they have not only not won, but they have not been competitive. So it's like the curse of Andre Drummond.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that one. Well, hey, that's going to do it for this version of the Fifth Chapter. I want to thank everybody for participating on the live chat on Facebook. And if you're listening on the podcast, that's awesome. We'll give you an additional thumbs up there. Coming up on Thursday's Fifth Chapter, where's Rod Wood's office located? We'll get to that, and we'll have some more picks for you. We'll try to get some winners and have some more fun. Did I thank Jelinek? I did. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Thanks for watching. So long.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter. Huh.